One of the things that I will always give the LEGO Ninjago movie sets praise for is the fact that it gave us a lot of very unique minifigures, and one of those in particular was the Urban Ninja. It's such a small little thing that you don't necessarily need, but a lot of Ninjago fans actually did want a more casual take on our beloved cast. And the thing is that it's been referenced and been shown multiple times in the show before the movie even released. Sure, you could do customs, and I believe some of the pieces actually existed for what they used in the show. I believe Jay's torso in particular was one that did exist. But the thing is that we just never officially had these interpretations for the ninja. And then luckily the Ninjago movie did give us them. What I do find fairly interesting though is that they did release them in a very weird way. They were literally split down the middle, and for reference I'm talking about their first instances of their release. There are variations of the Urban Ninja later down the line, mainly for Cole, Jay and Nia, but the thing is that these are the original instances of them, and like I said, they were released in halves. You were able to get Zane, Jay, Cole and the hooded variants of Lloyd actually through the Ninjago CMF, which was a fairly good way to get them, don't get me wrong, but what I found interesting is the fact then that the non-hooded variants of Lloyd, Nia and Kai were actually released in the actual sets. So it's quite interesting to note that there is actually that split difference, and it actually does reflect in the overall pricing. But I'll get into pricing later, but for now I actually want to look at these minifigures themselves. I'm going to go from my least favourite to my favourite of the bunch, and I'll be very curious to know if you do actually agree with my ranking of these minifigures. But let me not waste any time, and let's talk about my least favourite of the bunch, which is Zane. Whilst I don't overly dislike this minifigure, it is definitely my least favourite of the bunch. The thing for me is that I just don't really care for the printing. It's nothing overly interesting, and it feels a little off character, especially considering Zane. What you find is that with the rest of the ninja, they either have something very stylized on, or they have something just very simple to the point. And this is just some fluffy looking jumper, and I do think it's just a bit too much of a design difference for me to really be okay with it. It's honestly a bit strange in retrospect, and for that reason, it definitely has to be my least favourite. It does have its upsides though, because like I said, whilst I don't care for the printing, it's not overly that bad, and it did actually have a couple pieces that I do appreciate. For one, it does come with that backpacks piece. I don't have it with my Zane because it's not canon to the movie in any way, and I just don't overly care for the accessory. You'll find that for the most part with the minifigures that did have accessories, I just don't really care for them. But the thing is that it doesn't just have that, it also does have an exclusive Zane headprint. 99% of the time for the movie releases, Zane had that really weird dual molded head that I just didn't really care for. But the thing is that in one instance he had the angry expression with the hairprint on the back, and that was in the Temple of the Ultimate Weapon set, whereas this one does have the smiley face variant. So it is actually really good for that reason, and definitely does make it worth it in my eyes. And that's the thing, this is one of the cheaper minifigures of the bunch, so it's not actually that bad, and it does have some value to it. But like I said, it's just simply my least favourite of the bunch. Next up for me is definitely the case of Jay. This variant was, like I said, also in the Ninjago CMF, and I do appreciate it for what it actually did because it's a more stylized version of Jay. Of course, the biggest standout of this minifigure, and definitely very unique to this Jay, is the fact that he did have the scarf. I do appreciate the fact that they did give Jay some sort of fashion accessory, because I will say without it, it's just a very plain looking minifigure, especially for the standards of a CMF. There's just not really much in the way of printing and detail when it does come to this variant of Jay. What's interesting to me though is the fact that I did really like this variant of Jay until they released another variant of a casual version of him. There's one where he actually has a jacket. It's much closer to what we actually get to see in the show, and I really do like that variant. That in my opinion is the default Urban Jay, but this is the release Jay, and that's why this one is the one in the video. But the thing is that this one just feels like a much more simplistic version, especially in comparison to the other one. But again, by no means does that mean this is a bad minifigure. Just again, in similar vein to Zane, I just really prefer the other ones. This one is very down the road to me, and I honestly really did like it when it first released. I just think as time went by, I've just slowly started to lose favour when it does come to the minifigure. But it is a really cool Jay, and definitely one that does stand out, like I said, because of the scarf. So for that reason, it is actually quite good, and again, is another one of the cheap ones, thank you to the CMF. So I'm not mad at this Jay, it's just the fact that there's a better one. But now we've moved on from the Jay, we're definitely into the remainder of the minifigures that I just don't really have any major problems with. The thing is that after this point in time, I have maybe small nitpicks, but that's about it. And the first one for that for me is definitely the case of Cole. This again was another addition to the Ninjago CMF, and it's really funny that I didn't intentionally rank these by the fact that they were in a CMF, because typically speaking, CMFs have some really high quality minifigures. It's just this is how it's fallen for me. But the thing is that this version of Cole actually did have more details that I definitely do appreciate. The main thing is the fact that he is wearing that tank top, and on the back of course he has the band-aids, and it's very much a stylized version and definitely fits with Cole in particular in the movie. In similar vein to Jay, he did actually have later releases, but I'm gonna be honest, none of them really stood up to it for me. There was a variant that had this print for the center of the torso, but Cole was in a jacket, and there was another one where he actually had a guitar on the shirt itself. And those are pretty cool, but the thing is that I just simply prefer this version. It feels the most like Cole in a lot of different ways, and I'm very glad that that is actually the case. And again, this version actually did come with an exclusive head print in similar vein to Zane. This one actually did come with this really interesting looking snarky look for Cole. I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I don't actually display this minifigure with this head print in mind. Fun fact, I don't actually even display it with the hair down like you're seeing now. This is how you're meant to actually have the minifigure. But personally speaking, I just display it with the regular Cole face print and the bunned hair, because simply put, I just prefer it. But it's not like it's a detractor from the minifigure, and like I said, exclusive pieces are always nice to actually get, especially considering that at this point in Ninjago, we were very much used to just getting maybe one version of each ninja head, or maybe even just a dual molded if you're lucky, so it was just really cool to get these additional bits. But I'm gonna be honest, regardless of that, this minifigure is a really cool one, and definitely feels the most like the character that we are talking about. I think this has a lot of flair to it, and I definitely think it's a good Cole minifigure. The only reason it is lower is because I personally do change out the head and the hair, and that's just down to my own personal preference. I feel like if you do like the prints that it does come with on its own naturally, I do think you would appreciate this one a lot more. But that does mean we're into my 3 favorites of this line, and all of them, to be honest, could be argued to be at number 1, but I do think it kind of goes out saying which one I'm going to put. But as for the number 3 spot, it's going to be Nia. This Nia actually has the honor of being the only one of these outfits that actually make its way into the show. This version of Nia popped up in both Season 8 and in Crystallized, and honestly, it is really cool to actually see that be the case. And it's not for no reason either. This minifigure is honestly really cool and very stylized. It is a massive departure to what we had for a casual Nia before now. Obviously, this is a much bigger departure from the original outfits that she had. But the thing is that I vastly prefer this. This seems to reflect Nia's personality, especially in the later seasons, in a much more better light. And the printing actually does reflect that. It's honestly a fantastic print, and you could tell that they did like it. Because later on, they did do another version of Urban Nia, but the thing is that they just straight up reused this torso, because it's that good. Unfortunately, by technicality, there's no instance of a unique face print or anything like that, and that is a bit of a shame, but honestly, it doesn't really matter, because this one has the smiley version of Nia's face print. This one is one of 2 variants that you do get when it comes to Nia, and I do actually really prefer this version of the dual molded heads. Honestly, it's just a very nice add-on, and you didn't really need something exclusive in this particular instance. But I can't lie to you, just on an overall, it's just a fantastic Nia minifigure, and like I already mentioned, the fact that this is the only one technically canon to the Ninjago show is such an added bonus. So if you are someone who doesn't really care for movie minifigures, you still technically need this one for your Ninjago show minifigures, which is such a unique and really fun thing, and honestly, is part of the reason why it's in the top 3. But to get into my second favourite of this line, it is actually going to be the Lloyd. This version, by technicality, has got 2 variants. You've got its unhooded variant and also its hooded variant at the exact same time. I'm considering them both basically at the same, because the only difference is one of them has hair, one of them has the hood. For me, the main version has always been the non-hooded variant. We see the hooded one in the movie for maybe a brief moment, but for the most part, this is the version of Lloyd that you have to consider. And I have to say, it is a very good one. It's very plain, very simple, to the point, and very similar in nature to his show counterpart. But the thing is that this one just has a couple of slight differences and the lack of the elemental symbol, which makes complete sense. The non-hooded one does have back printing. It does actually have the hood on the back, which is obviously quite funny, and the hooded variant of course doesn't have anything in accordance with it. But the thing is that the hood is a very interesting piece. Even though I don't consider it the main variant of Lloyd, it's still really cool to actually have. And obviously, fun fact, if you were there when these versions of Lloyd initially released, the hood actually had a really weird painting issue. Of course, you can see a little bit of Lloyd's blonde hair coming through the hood, but in initial releases, it actually came across as almost grey. So if you do have a grey variant, you basically had some of the first batches of the Lloyd. So it's a very fun little detail, and honestly just a little bit of trivia for you. And outside of the whole thing with the hood, the only other main thing is that the non-hooded version of Lloyd does actually have an exclusive double-sided head print. You have one with a very standard smile, which is very nice, and you have another one with this really weird somber looking smile. I've never really known what facial expression this is considered, but it's a very relaxed looking style. I don't really care for it. I display the regular smile with this version of Lloyd. But the thing is that it's nice to have that additional version of the Lloyd head print anyways. But I'm gonna be honest, on an overall, this is definitely the best in a lot of different ways. The thing is that it is just the most to the point. It's definitely the most recognizable of the bunch as well, and definitely a massive standout. And obviously, he is a bit cheaper as well, so it is nice to get your hands on it. But the thing is that there is one last one. And that of course is the case of Kai. This is the only variant of a casual Kai, and the problem is that if you do want to complete this set, you do need to get your hands a hold of him. The problem is that he is the second most expensive Kai as of the time I'm filming this video. This minifigure released exclusively to the Ninjago City set, and obviously it was a very expensive set for the time, and this Kai has become very expensive because of it. And it kind of goes without saying, because the other thing is that he definitely had more budget than the rest of the Ninja. Of course, Lloyd, for example, had a very small amount of arm printing, but this version of Kai has full-on arm printing as well. So the exclusivity to it and the increased detail definitely was a massive factor. It looks fantastic, and it's definitely an amazing looking minifigure. But the thing is that the price is very much a factor here. You could argue it's a bit more basic in its nature, but it's honestly one of the more detailed minifigures of the bunch. Of course, it's very standard and very minimal in its design, but they do bring it across very well. I honestly really do like this minifigure, and I got it for very cheap because I got it when it first came out. Honestly, if I was going out of my way to buy this version of Kai now, for one, I would, because it's my whole thing. I love getting Ninjago minifigures, but I would definitely feel a bit meh when it does come to spending that much. But the problem is that it is just a fantastic minifigure, and taking out the whole thing of the pricing, it is just very difficult to not say that he's a fantastic version of Kai. I would recommend him, but the thing is that I don't want to really recommend spending as much as you would have to. I mean, I think if you want to get him brand new, you're paying something along the lines of £60. And I think that's just kind of where I want to give an overall. The thing is that this is a fantastic line of Ninja. This is fantastic if you actually play with your Lego, say if you do stop motion, for the sake of world building, for lore reasons. These are some of the best minifigures you can own because you have a way to have the ninja not in their ninja uniforms. And honestly, I can speak for myself, especially at the time when these came out, that was a fantastic thing to actually have. Honestly, it just does so much for having these variants of Ninja because it can do a lot, especially taking into account what I've already said. But the thing is that of course I have to consider the fact that 5 of these Ninja are fairly cheap, very easy to get your hands on, and honestly very much worth it for that reason. But of course, if you're going out your way to buy the entire set, you have to consider the fact that you would be paying the amount that you would have to for just the Kai. Kai alone is worth all of the other Ninja minifigures 2 or 3 times. And that's the thing you have to consider. The fact is that if you do want these Ninja minifigures, you need to consider whether or not you want to spend that much on Kai. If you're just going for every single Ninja minifigure, good luck. But the thing is that if you are just after a line of cool looking Ninja, I cannot recommend them purely based on the fact of Kai. The thing is that he is simply put not worth it. You could get many other lines of Ninja minifigures that look better at actual Ninja uniforms and just simply are a lot cheaper. And that is the main takeaway that I want to give for today. And I would love to know, is this a line of Ninja minifigures you are going to get? Or is this a line of minifigures you would get if you already own them today? Would you see the price of Kai and still buy the minifigure? I would love to know what your opinion is. And if you did enjoy the video, definitely hit subscribe. I love talking about Ninjago. And also, if you want to support the channel further, you could always become a channel member. There's no obligation whatsoever, but if you do want to, it would be eternally appreciated. You could join the likes of World of Cars Entertainment and Grandmaster Sensei 28208. Thank you very much both. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. Take care. Okay, bye!